with Kandia Haynesworth Designs, and thank you so much for joining in on my new series called Home and Headquarters, where you get to watch me transform a 100-year-old vintage townhouse into a new home for myself and new headquarters for my home-based embroidery personalization business. What we are working on is project number 5. We are going to be adding personalization to this bolster pillow. The reason why I wanted to do a tutorial on this is because this is not like a regular bolster pillow, whereas it would have a slip cover that I would be able to simply unzip and take out of the pillow form and put the cover onto the fast frames and then put it onto the embroidery machine. So we are going to make what I like to refer to as a slip cover, because it's kind of like a slip cover. The only thing is we're not going to be covering the entire bolster pillow. We're just going to be literally making the embroidery to go into the center and slip on like a tube, so to speak. To do that, we need to take the measurements of the pillow. And so these bolster pillows are in different widths and stuff, so you want to just use a regular measuring tape. This one happens to be 25 inches. All right, so that's going to be 25 inches around, and I am not going to make this a sewing project. Now, generally, I would say that you could use Velcro on the end to close it, you know, to open and close it, or you can just sew it closed all together so you can slide it on. I am going to use snaps for this. The reason is because a lot of my embroidery mentoring students don't sew. A lot of you all don't sew. And so I really wanted to make this something that you can either include in your personal space. You can do it as a gift. You can even offer it as services. And you don't have to do it with it being a sewing project. Okay, and so the next thing you want to do is you want to measure the width. How wide is your pillow? I'm sorry if my arm is blocking. All right, so this pillow is going to be 20 inches wide. So now I need to determine how wide do I want the embroidery slip cover to go in the center here. Okay, and so if I make it, let's say from 5 to 15, that's kind of wide. So I think I'm going to do 6 to 14. I kind of like that measurement there. I like that so it can go in the front, but maybe I'll do 5 to 15, which will be 10 inches wide for the fabric that's going in there. That will give me a nice area to embroider on. Okay, so once again, you need to measure it all the way around. Then you need to measure the entire width or length of the pillow and then determine how wide do you want your embroidery. And so I am going to cut the fabric 25 inches all the way around, but I'm going to cut it at a 10-inch width. I'll meet you back. Okay, so I have trimmed this down, and it is at that 10-inch mark pretty much that I want it to be. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about before we do the embroidery is the fabric that you're using. I'm using a vinyl, a pearlescent or a pearlized vinyl. All right, and so the thing is, vinyl doesn't fray. And so that's going to make your project 10 times easier if you use a non-fraying fabric. Okay, and so that also means that I am going to be putting some trim on the edges here simply by gluing it on, because remember, we're trying to keep this as a no-sew project. This is for my consultation office. This is not for a customer. I would not use glue if it was for a customer. Okay, so I'm not recommending that, but what I am saying that if it's just something that you're doing for yourself or even a family member who's not going to mind, then yes, you can do all these little shortcuts that I am going to be doing in this video. If you are selling this as a service, you do not want to use hot glue to put on the trim. That's going to be tacky. It's going to destroy your reputation, because they're not going to be happy, because eventually it will pop off or it will be messy. And so you don't want to do that. All right, so I'm going to show you a variety of the trims that I have to choose from, and this will give you an idea on how you can do this and what direction that you can go in according to your personal preference. Okay, so I have pulled out a bunch of trims, and I am going to assume that you are going to be doing this project as a no-sew project. Now, if you decide that you want to sew the trim on, you want to sew the closure, you want to sew Velcro closures, then do it. Okay, but if you are a person who don't sew, then I just want you to kind of pay attention to what I'm doing here and how this is going to work. Okay, so the first trim that we are going to be looking at is going to be a lace trim with a pearl center. Okay, and so that would be that you would literally be gluing it down, whereas the behind the pearl beads, you would be gluing it down there. Okay, and it will look something sort of like that. All right. Okay, so this trim is lace with some little rose petals on it, ribbon rose petals that is, and every other rose has a centered pearl, okay, or a pearl center. And then that one will look like this. All right, and you can do a pearl that looks like teardrops. And keep in mind, you are gluing these down, so you want to be mindful. Of if the glue would show or not. So this probably would be one that would be kind of challenging, to be quite frank. And then I have a string of pearls, just like so. So I'm just going to lay it on like that. Okay. And so let's go a little closer. So that one looks like that. And then that one looks like that. Something like this. All right, and this has sequins, it has pearls, and so you could. So because I am doing like this cream thing, I'm using trims that coordinate. All right, and so let's get a closer look. Well, this one kind of fell off, so I'm just gonna put that back on. At least I'm gonna try. This one keeps falling down. Anyhow, that one looks like that. So this one will look something like this. And then if you wanted, you could do some kind of ruffle, depending on your fabric. So you could do something like this. So something like that. Let's see. So let's get a closer look. So something like that, or something like that. And the embroidery will go in the center. Okay, and so there's a variety of trims that you could do. Okay, depending on your taste, depending on the fabric that you decide to use, you know, that will go. And if it's for a customer, then it depends on their preference. But once again, I wouldn't recommend gluing anything for a customer because it would come off. All right. And if none of these work, then you could get a little fancier. Like me, I like a little bit glitz and glam. And Hobby Lobby actually had these string of rhinestones. And so if I wanted to do these rhinestones, I could do something like this. I love that, actually. Let's see if I could get a closer look. I love that. That's very clean, very elegant. However, isn't that beautiful? I absolutely love that. I don't know if you can see how beautiful, but anyhow, it is diamond studs and rhinestones, that is. And it's just gorgeous. I love that. And so I'm going to be using this one. Now, this trim is actually an iron-on trim. And so even though it has the rhinestones, let me show you guys how this is made. See on the back of this, that's where the glue is. And then you would just turn it and then press it with your iron. All right. Or you could use hot glue. Hot glue would just kind of melt it a little bit. But if you have an imperfect edge, then this is a good cover for that, okay? This is also good if you have an edge that you are cutting with scissors, like what is it, pinking shears or something like that, because it's wide. Okay, and so this is going to cover your edges all together and make it look nice and neat. So now let's take this fabric to the embroidery machine and let's start the embroidery. Okay, so I'm doing the embroidery, and today I am using the Brother Entrepreneur Pro PR1000E. And some of you always ask what kind of font that I use. This font is from stitchtopia.com. Please use the referral code 2CE73. And I will post the referral code and the link below. Now, what kind of font am I using from stitchtopia.com? This is the Grace font. However, she does have 6 versions of the Grace font. I will post the link below to the one that I am using in this embroidery personalization. And I just want to point out that this fabric, because it is a thick fabric, is actually floated. It is not on the hoop. And so those of you who are new to embroidery may not know what floating is. And that is just a simple method of not putting the fabric onto the embroidery frame. So what that means is that you have to secure the fabric onto the embroidery frame without actually hooping it, okay? And how this is done, this was actually glued, okay? And so what that means is that I use a spray adhesive. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, well, I'll show it to you another way. I saw that the camera wasn't really focused. I use a spray adhesive, and I put the stabilizer onto the embroidery frame, just the stabilizer. Use the spray adhesive and then laid the fabric on top and just made sure that it was really stuck on there well. You can also use pins and clips to secure your fabric. And so many years ago, when I first started embroidering, I took on the task of doing embroidery for a customer who wanted embroidery on furry headrest covers for a car. And the first headrest cover was a nightmare because I was constantly fighting with the hoop, trying to get it secure on this thick furry fabric. However, by the time I got to the second headrest cover, I had figured out that I should unravel the seams and slip it through and float it. Don't try to get it on the frame and then lock it in place because sometimes fabrics are too thick. This is when you would use this floating method. So if you were doing a hood like a hoodie can be thick if it is in layers, or a hood to a coat. So if you are trying to put personalization on a hood, then you might want to float it. You can also get fast frames. So if you're not familiar with fast frames, you can look it up, and that is a wonderful technique to use, and wonderful devices. They come in a series of sizes. So if you wanted to do small items like socks, fast frames is the way to go. It doesn't require hooping. And so I'm going to allow this to do its thing, and then I will meet you back over on the sofa when the embroidery is done. Okay, so before we go over to the sofa, I wanted to just clarify exactly what I was saying in regards to the floating method, because I realized that the embroidery machine was a bit loud and you probably did not hear me. And so I will just go over it very quickly. And so what that means is that you are not putting the fabric on the embroidery hoop. And so you know how it has 2 parts and you layer it down and you put it on top. You're not doing that. That means that you are only securing the stabilizer onto the embroidery hoop. You're going to use an adhesive spray. You're going to use clips. You're going to use pins to get your fabric onto the hoop like so. And so some people like to use big clips. Okay, some people also like to use the big clips that you use to bind papers together. You know, the black clips or the black metal clips to bind papers together. Some people use pins. do whatever you need to do to get your fabric onto that hoop. The only thing is you have to really monitor it when you're using pins and things like that, because they can pop off or your embroidery design can become misaligned. So for me, I don't do the floating method on big thick items that I cannot really secure. All right, and so that means that for me, I like flat items. I'll do floating method on a blanket, a fleece blanket, something like that, something that I can really use the adhesive to hold it onto the embroidery hoop. All right, and so what that means is that you see how this is, okay, and you see this is not on that embroidery frame at all. So all I have to do now is literally pop the embroidery frame, and that's it, okay? And then this is gonna just come through like so. I don't know if you can see that. All right, and so the reason why I like to use the floating method for this is such a small piece of fabric. However, sometimes the embroidery frame will have an imprint. And if you want to avoid an imprint, that's another reason why you will float. However, there are also strategies that you can use, like a paper towel, for example, to avoid imprints or hoop burns. That's what, you know, we like to call them, hoop burns. But for me, I like to do it when I know that I have a heavy duty fabric that will take on the print of the embroidery frame. Hooping is not the way to go in instances like that, only floating method. Okay, so now let's go over to the sofa. Okay, so we are back at the sofa, and I have the fabric laying on the bolster pillow, so that means that it is not secured. I haven't fastened it or sewed it or anything like that. And so what I wanted you to focus on now is placement, but not placement of the embroidery. The embroidery is done. You want to focus on the placement of your closure. And so if you are going to do snap closures, you want to pay attention to where that snap is going to be. If you are going to be doing Velcro, now sometimes the Velcro have the adhesive on the back. That might actually work temporarily, especially if you get a decent quality like a fire extinguisher loop and lock Velcro, then you probably can get away with that. All right, and so, or if you want to sew it, you can get away with that too. But you know what else you can get away with? You can get away with gluing it too, if it is not for a customer. You can just literally glue it with hot glue gun or regular glue and just let it sit and dry, and you'll be fine, because the only thing you really are doing is slipping this on and off. Okay, and so now I am going to play with my trim a little bit, and then I will meet you back here. Okay, so I decided to add some lace to the slip cover, and I wanted to show you before I put the rhinestones on what it's going to look like. Okay, so let me just make sure that I'm in camera so you can see that. Oh, okay. Okay, so before I put the rhinestone on, I wanted to show you what I decided to do. I decided to add a little bit of lace trim to it just to give it some contrast up against the rhinestones. But what I really wanted to focus on was the back part of this, okay? And so one part of the flap that you're not going to see, I didn't add any lace trim, but the flap that you are going to see, I did add lace trim. And this is just literally glued with the hot glue gun all the way around. So you literally just taking the gun and you're doing it in small increments. So you're not gluing it all the way around in one shot. And so basically this is your no sew method, and as you can see, the closures here are snaps. Okay, so it's just 3 snaps here. I could have used 4, could have used 5, but I thought 3 would be good enough. Okay, so now I'm going to take this back over to my desk and add some glue, and then start adding the rhinestone trim. Okay, so here's the finished product, and I absolutely love the way this came out. I am super pleased the way the rhinestone looked layered on top of the lace. I really like that. It shows a lot of contrast. I am not even sure if the camera is picking up all the glitz and sparkle of these rhinestones. They are absolutely beautiful. However, I did not iron them on. These are iron-on rhinestones. Remember, I showed you the glue behind it, I did use the hot glue gun just to melt these on, and the reason being is because I did not want to apply the heat to the vinyl. Now, I want to make sure that we are clear that this is not heat transfer vinyl. This is fabric vinyl. All right, so this is something that you would cover a chair with, or something that you would find in a car, that kind of vinyl. Okay, so this is not something that you're going to be putting on your silhouette or your Cricut maker or anything like that. There's two different kind of vinyls here, and I just want to make sure that this is the fabric vinyl that we are talking about, and you are fully aware of that. Okay, other than that, the embroidery, once again, is by Stitchtopia.com. It is that Grace font. She does have 6 versions of the Grace font. Personally, I think that you should buy the whole set. She does offer a phenomenal discount every week. Stitchtopia.com. I will post the link below. Please use referral code 2CE73 when you are registering for the first time, so she can know that I was the one that sent you over there, and you saw maybe her work in one of my creations, pretty much. Other than that, that's all I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you are thinking about doing something like this, please post a picture in the group Embroidery Boss on Facebook, so I can see what your ideas and what your creations are. And if you like this video, make a comment below and give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you haven't done so, please click that bell so you can be notified when I upload videos. And as always, you can find me on Facebook at KandiaHaynesworth.com, or in the group Embroidery Boss, or in the group Dollar Tree Moneymakers, and on Instagram and on Pinterest. And until then, I'll see you next time. Bye!